Hi, I'm Gardener Scott. One of the secrets to growing good tomatoes is learning how to trellis them. Join me as I show you how to trellis tomatoes for the best harvest. There are two basic types of tomato plants, determinate and indeterminate. Determinate tomato plants are what I like to call the bush tomato. They'll grow up to a certain size, usually 3 feet, maybe 4 feet tall and around, and that's as tall as they're ever going to get. The kind that most gardeners tend to like to grow is what's the indeterminate variety, what I call the vining tomato. It will keep growing and growing and growing as long as there's warmth and water and light. I've had tomato plants get 12, even 13 feet long if given the right conditions. Those are indeterminate tomatoes. I'm growing both varieties, but for the indeterminate varieties of tomatoes, it's important that you trellis them. Otherwise, that's 12 feet of tomatoes that are sprawling around on the ground, and that's really taking up a lot of space unnecessarily. But if you trellis to grow vertically, you can grow quite a few tomato plants in a relatively small space and grow an amazing amount of fruit for a big harvest. Many gardeners have these flimsy tomato cages that really do no good for tomatoes. I do have some sturdier, bigger metal cages that I use for my determinate tomatoes. These San Marzano plants will be held up pretty well by these cages. And remember, the determinate plants don't get that big, so you really don't need a big trellising system for a determinate tomato. The idea behind trellising any sprawling plant is essentially the same. You want to get the plant off the ground and get some control over it. This is exactly the case with tomatoes. You can trellis along a wall or a fence. You can use a post. You can use a freestanding tomato trellis like the one I like to construct, and you can check out this video to show how I do that. When I'm growing tomatoes in a greenhouse or in a hoop structure, I like to use twine and just train the tomato up this twine until it reaches the height that I'm comfortable with. The process is very simple and very easy. I begin by tying the twine at the base of the tomato plant. Now, this isn't a fancy knot. You just want a loop that goes around the stem. This holds the twine in place and gives the initial foundation for the twine trellis that the tomato is going to eventually crawl up. After it's tied, I will loop the twine a couple times around the plant to help support it and to help initiate that vertical growth. I do the same thing with the determinate tomato plants in the cages, using the twine to start that vertical growth in the cage. As the plant grows, it will naturally grow away from the twine. So, periodically, what you'll need to do is wrap the plant around the twine so that you control the direction that it grows. Now, it'll continue to grow up this twine. When you have secondary leaders that start to develop as well, you'll want to trellis those. So now I have a second twine that I'll tie at the base of this secondary leader, and I'll do the same type of trellising action. A loose loop around the stem, and then I'll start training the leader up this new twine. So now this plant has the first stem. That was the first one I tied off, and now it has this second one, and both of these will grow into very strong and hardy parts of this plant. There is an alternative way to use the twine and trellis the tomatoes. It's called a tomato clip, and it's just a piece of plastic. It locks onto the twine and then snaps around the stem, holding it in place. It's easy, it's simple, and with a little practice you can just do it one-handed, locking it around the twine, looping it around to the back of the plant. They're relatively inexpensive. I'll put a link down below of where you can get some of these tomato clips. I like using them particularly when I have a lot of plants to do. And as the plants grow, they can actually put a lot of stress where they've been wrapped around the stem. So by using these tomato clips, I'm giving the stem a lot of room to grow. Using the twine alone is easy, and you don't have that extra expense of the clips. Anytime you're in the garden, you can trellis the tomato by just grabbing the plant and the twine, wrapping the plant around the twine, and support it. But the tomato clips really are easy to use. They go on quickly, they're strong, they allow for the stem to get bigger and wider, and they're reusable. At the end of the season, you just disconnect the clip, store them away, and they're ready to use the following season. So this really is a nice option for trellising tomatoes. With the proper trellising and pruning, all these tomato plants will grow to the very top of this hoop, 6, 7, 8 feet, and they'll produce a lot of fruit. There you have it, how I trellis tomatoes. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. If you haven't subscribed to the Gardener Scott channel, please feel free to do so. And if you like the video, you can give me a thumbs up and share. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.